Hello and welcome. This is Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. This is day 4 of the Spring 2025 Web Technologies course. We went ahead and got through chapter 1 and 2 on that first week, on week 1. And this week we'll be working on week 2 would be chapters 3 and 4. A couple actually a handful of little topics I want to kind of just go over real quick. So Friday I sent out books, redeem codes, redemption codes, so you kind of vouchers so you can get your books. If you have any problems with that, please message me, either email me or through Discord, and let me know if you have any problems. But you should have access now to both the HTML and the JavaScript book. Okay. The next item here is new student orientation for any new students that are in the course. We got a few of them. There's a couple videos that I need you to watch and just confirm that you watched them. I have to send that back to the student success counselor, actually student success department, letting them know that you did in fact look at those videos. So I will be sending them to you later today. Regarding grading of assignments, I just want to point out, please read those assignments carefully. Overall, people did pretty well. But, there's some certain things that, people just kind of overlook. So, and I know they're not written the best. I understand that. But, please, try to read it carefully. Make sure that the different kind of requirements, the different sections, that you kind of make sure that you implement those, so you can get it, work on getting a good grade on that. As far as grading the assignments, usually sometimes I'll start a little bit on the weekend if somebody checks some, got things in early. Sometimes I'll grade a little bit here and there. It could go on for depending on what's going on. Usually as we get later in the course, the assignments are more difficult, and the assignments are a little more difficult. It takes longer to grade. Plus, there might be some other things I'm involved in that I won't be able to, grade them quickly. So, figure, usually, like Monday, Tuesday, I should be done with them. Sometimes it could go into Wednesday. But I think most of the ones I have today, most of the ones we have for this past week, I should have them graded by the end of the day, if not sometime tomorrow. Let's see. And also, okay, as far as the assignments that for every week, as far as the assignments, usually I make them available in the morning of that week. On Monday morning, I'll make them available. And then, they will close, obviously. In the most part, they'll close on Sundays, except for hands-on tests. And I'll go into that in a little bit more here in a minute. As far as written tests, just wanted to kind of reiterate that written tests cannot be submitted late, so you need to make sure that you get those done by the due date. Okay. Also, I kind of want to show you real quick on that. Let me show you on the written test here. One thing you can do here. So if you come in here for your previous written test, all right. So if after it's been submitted and everything, you can come back in here. Actually, I think it's after it closes that you can actually view it. But you can come in here and you can actually click on these different questions and see what's the correct answer. If you got things wrong, you can see what was correct and what was incorrect. Okay. Do want to mention, and we'll discuss this here in a little bit also. Chapter 3, I noticed that there's some wrong answers on some of those. So what I will do in that scenario, in that situation, is I'll after the due date's passed, so say next Monday or whatever, I'll go in there and I'll verify that if you were incorrect, if you got the correct answer, but it was marked as incorrect, I will change the value of that. Okay. So you get credit for that. Please let me know if you see something you think's incorrect. I'll go ahead and take a look at those as well. But I'm going to try to make sure that I review all those ahead of time so that we know, so I know which ones are incorrect. So like I said, remember, written tests cannot be submitted late. So you need to make sure you get them due by the due date. Homework and labs can be submitted for a 10% penalty. So basically, take a 10% off if it was a 100-point. Not all of them are 100 points. Sometimes they're less or more. Generally, either it's 100 or less. But so it's basically take 10% off the top. So if it was 100 points, it'll be 90 points. And then, from there we grade it. I'll be grading it from there. Now, in your mind, you think, it's easy just obviously get busy with things in life. So I just put that off to later. But it gets really hard to get caught up once you start getting really behind. So please still try to keep up with your work. It's still an option for you to turn it in late. But usually when a student starts turning in late work on a regular basis, usually kind of snowballs on them. And, it's hard to pass the course when you're doing that. Okay, so this week we will not have a hands-on test. There's some weeks we'll have hands-on tests and other weeks we won't. Whenever we do have a hands-on test, I will be giving that to you most of the time. I'm going to try to do it every time in this course, but most of the time it'll be Monday morning, right around this time. I'll make it visible and you can start working on it, and it'll be due by Wednesday. So basically it's going to be 3 days there, okay? So it'd be like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It'd be due by midnight on Wednesday. So you got 3 days to work on the hands-on test. So the hands-on test, generally that was always really meant more for in-person classes, where actually they would come in on a day, and that day would be test day, and they would sit down and they would take that test, and by the end of that time period, sometimes they'd be allocated like 4 hours or whatever. They'd have to have that test done, okay? And then it would be graded from there, right? So for the online courses, things are a little different. And I understand, there's people that have job responsibilities and other home responsibilities as well. So I kind of give you a few days to work on that, okay? But you'll need to get it done within that time period. And I'm going to talk about holidays here in a minute, because actually next Monday is a holiday. But so even if it's a holiday, it really doesn't matter. It's going to be available that Monday morning. And you can, if it's a holiday, you're not going to work, you're not going to do anything that day. If you want to observe that holiday, that's up to you. So then you'd have to have that done Tuesday and Wednesday. You'd have 2 days to do it if you didn't want to work on it Monday. Okay. So something just to keep in mind there, but kind of don't want to change that time frame there, the dates due and when it's visible, just kind of make that consistent. So yeah, let's go ahead real quick. I want to kind of show you the holiday schedule. I don't think I did do this in the orientation or the welcome video on that. So the calendar here, so you see this, the 20th, which is next Monday. It's an all school holiday. Martin Luther King Day. And then also we have Martin Luther King Day, and we have President's Day coming up in February. And then also in April, this is like Easter weekend. We have one on Friday there. But as far as the Monday ones that would be relevant for hands-on tests, we're talking about January 20th and February 17th. And so I did just kind of want to mention that for the online course, it's a little different than in-person classes. Not that you're required to work on those holidays, but as far as the number of classes, like day 1, day 2, right? This is day 4. It doesn't matter. A holiday doesn't matter. Okay, a holiday does not matter as far as the days. So actually, what happens is we don't deduct the holidays from what day that you're in the class. You're in the class all the days, all 5 days every week, if there's a holiday or not a holiday, right? That's pretty much how it is. And actually, for an online course, it actually is going to end if the online course started on the same day as the in-person class. That online course is going to end a few days earlier than the in-person classes because the holidays don't count, right? They extend the in-person class schedule a little longer because of holidays. Okay. Kind of want to mention that. Let's see what else we have there. So the next hands-on test, I will make that available next Monday, the January 20th, and it'll be due on Wednesday by midnight. Okay. So let's go ahead and start on this lecture for chapter 3. So also kind of did want to mention as far as, some of this homework and labs, sometimes there's some overlap. There's things that are going to be covered here in chapter 3 that we've kind of already did in the chapter 2 homework. So that happens. They're not exactly in sync with the chapters. Okay. So just kind of want to keep that in mind. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, we're going to code we're going to talk about semantic elements. And we're going to also show the folder structure of our website. We're going to describe the use of the title and meta elements, which we've kind of done a little bit already. But we're going to discuss those a little more that are in the head section of the HTML document. We're going to distinguish between a block element and an inline element. Describe the use of block elements, which are, many of them are block elements, H1, H2, H3, the P, and many and other ones as well. So we're going to go through those. So discuss basically the difference between block elements and inline elements. We're going to describe the use of semantic elements, header, main, section, article, nav, aside, footer, and figure. Okay. We're going to describe the use of the div element. Describe the use of inline elements, such as emphasis, strong, etc. Describe the use of character entities. And that's this first one's a non-breaking space. That's a non-breaking space. The next one is for copyright. Okay, we'll go into that a little more here in a little bit. And we're going to distinguish between absolute and relative URLs. Okay, and we're going to talk about root relative and document relative paths. Describe the use of accessibility guidelines for A elements. I think we've kind of already did that. Might just touch upon that again. Describe the two types of list that you can create with HTML, which we've kind of done that. That's the ordered list and unordered list. Describe the use of accessibility guidelines for image elements. And I know we've done that as well using that alt tag, right? So here is a browser that shows the title and the favicon, right? So the title up here, San Jose Valley Town Hall. And then you see this little icon up here, right? So this is called the favicon. So so how you put this in here, you add that as a link element within your head section, okay? And what I'm going to do here, because I know it's a requirement to create one for the homework assignment. And so what I'm going to end up doing, instead of going through generating that and all of that now, I'm going to do a separate video, and I'll work on that later today. And so I'll have that by the end of the day on how to generate one, how to include it, and everything like that. Okay, so I'll just separate that out a little bit. But real quick here for that, I'm going to show you. So here, if you look at, this is W3 Schools, you see up here at the tab, right, they have their little W with the 3. This is their favicon, right? That's that little icon. And then here's the title. Obviously, this is the title of the page right here, HTML file paths, right? Okay. This is just a head section, includes metadata, which we've kind of looked at a little bit already. But for this one, we want to make sure, for your assignments, you want to make sure you include a description, okay? So the name of it's a description, and then here's your content, and here's a description of the page. And these are used, description and keywords, title. This is all used by search engines. If you're actually got something out on the web, on the public internet, and it's available to the public. Search engines are going to crawl. They crawl the internet all the time, and they're going to crawl the pages, and they use those little robots that go and crawl the internet, and they're going to grab this information. Okay, so it is relevant and it's important to get your site ranked. Especially if it's something distinct, you want to make sure you have it's distinct keywords there as well. If some specialty type thing, so that it shows up higher if somebody searches on that, right? So search engine optimization guidelines for title tag. Always code a title tag in the head section, right? The title tag should accurately describe the page content. The title should include 1 or 2 focus keywords. Okay. Keep that in mind. I think this one here is going to be just a hint, kind of a question on the written test. Yeah, I should have mentioned earlier as far as written tests. I'm not going to be doing them like I did the first week. You're going to have to kind of work on them yourself going forward here. Okay. I'll try to assist you a little bit as we go along, but you're going to have to work on them yourself. But the title tag should include 1 or 2 focus keywords. The title should be interesting enough to entice a reader to click on it when it's shown in the search results for a search engine. The title should be unique for each page. Limit the length of your titles to around 65 characters because most search engines don't display more than that in their results. Okay. Now, as far as the description meta tag, there's also description. The description should summarize the content of your page. It should be unique for each page. It can be longer than a title tag, right? The description can be longer than a title tag. When the description is displayed in the search engine results, it should encourage users to click on your link, right? So in a search, the first thing that's going to come back, you're going to see the bolder, you're going to see that title tag, and then underneath that, you're going to see a description, right? HTML, it uses block elements. So let's go ahead and look at this a little bit. So these are just some examples of some block elements, the heading tags, a paragraph tag, okay? And so let's go ahead and let's look at that a little bit, I think in W3 schools here. File pass. Okay. So these are the block level elements. So the P, which is the paragraph tag, is a block level element. A div is a block element. Here are other block level elements as well. Okay. And I think, yep, it doesn't have the H1s there, but that's okay. Okay, so let's look at real quick, we'll look at that. So as you notice that hello world here. So what they did is they put this border around this. So this is actually showing that this thing, a block level is going to extend the length of the whole page. Or I shouldn't even say the whole page because it wouldn't be necessarily true. It's going to fill up the length of what's, it could be constrained by other things, right? You could have other things that how you formatted the page where it could be shorter than that, okay? But generally, if you it's going to take up the new line, the whole line in that section, so to speak, okay? And we'll look at that a little more here in a bit. But this border kind of really helps with that. So let me show you something here real quick. Let's change one of these. Instead of this, let's just do like a span tag. If we do a span tag here, let's do a span tag. Now, span tag is an inline one, okay? So if we do the span like that, and then sorry about that. I don't know what I'm doing there. So I got the span tag, right? And so now if I run this, it's just going to put it right here. Well, it's because this is probably not a good idea. Here, let me just move this out of here. And the reason it's kind of in here in this border is because it's styled right here. And since this is within the div tag, it's going to stay there, right? So let me move that out of there. So now let's run this. So here, this is a span tag, all right? So let's do put a border around this. Let's do add this. And I'm going to tell you later why we really don't want to do our styles like this. So let me do that. Let's run that. So as you noticed here on this little span tag, we put the border around it. It didn't go to length of the page because this is an inline style, right? This is an inline style as opposed to a block level, okay? Block level is going to take up as much space as it possibly can, okay, within that area. And the span tag is called inline, so it does not take up all that, okay? What else do I want to show something else here? I think we're okay on that. I think we could just real quick do a couple other ones here. Let's do a H1 here. So here's an H1. The same thing. It's a block level element. It's going to take up the whole section, right? It's going to take up the whole section. All right. So that's what a block level element is. It takes up all the available space. And inline does not. We're going to be looking at that here in a minute, I guess. All right. Block level elements, okay. That's really guidelines for headings. So this is just about heading tags. So use heading tags to show the structure and importance of the content on the page. Always use the H1 tag to identify the most important information on the page. Only code a single H1 tag for each page. So one thing it says not to do, and I agree here, is don't use heading level as a way to size text. Because, there might be some certain text within your page. I want this bigger. So you just stick a heading on it. A heading should be used because it's kind of follows a flow of the page where you have a heading and you have something underneath that. You have another heading, something underneath that, right? So you just don't want to use a heading in the middle of something just to make some text bigger. You can change. There's other ways to do that with our style sheets and so forth to make text bigger, okay? So that's not the way you really should be doing that, okay? So like it says, only code one single H1 for each page. It's not required that you have that, but, if you have a heading on your page, which you most likely are going to, make sure you only have one. Then you decrease one level at a time to show subsequent levels of importance, okay? In reality, you're not wanting to do a H1 tag here, then an H4 tag here, then an H2 tag here, like all different, just throwing them all over. Usually you want to follow some kind of a hierarchy in the grouping that you got on a page, for, make it a little more aesthetically pleasing, right? HTML with structural elements. Okay, so we're going to talk about structural elements here a little bit. So So here's like a header, a main, a footer, right? Header, main, footer. So these are considered structural elements, right? They have a certain purpose. Headers, the heading, top of the page, towards the top of the page. You got a main, which is pretty much the bulk of your content on your page. Then you have a footer, usually at the bottom, with a copyright, some other information as well down there, right? And these are called structural elements, okay? So you should generally use structural elements when, for the most part, you should try to always use structural elements. Now, one that's not a structural element, a div tag, and a div tag is not structural, and it really only should be used if you can't use anything structural, okay? So as you need, like in HTML5, the earlier version of HTML didn't have these headers, main, and footer, right? And so a long time ago, really actually wasn't that long ago, it depends on your perspective of a long time ago, you used to use div tags to do all this kind of stuff. Let me kind of actually show you an example here. Let's see if I have. So here's, let me close this out. So here's this antique mall, just a basic site here. Was created, I think, a long time ago. This is just a basic static site in the St. Louis area, St. Charles, St. Clair, South County. So they have multiple locations here. Okay, so this is one that was created a long time ago. And also, if you ever look at the HTML, sometimes if it's on a image or something, like this is an image, you can't right click and do view source, right? You can't really do that here. Sometimes you have to kind of come over here to a different place just to know if you're on an image or something, you won't be able to view the source. It has to be kind of on the actual HTML page, area, so to speak. Just not on an image, I should say. So here's, don't let this all confuse you here. And actually, I don't think we're going to look at it this way. I think we're going to use, and this isn't required for you to know necessarily for testing purposes, but, we will do this. So here, this is the elements. Don't worry about all this. I know it's very confusing. It's very confusing for me. There's just too much stuff all over the place here, right? But, you'll learn how to use this a little bit. So here's kind of, you notice they've kind of using a lot of div tags. This was the way you did things quite, some years ago, right? And actually, let me even back up a little further here. If you look at the top here, remember how we write doctype.html for the HTML5, right? Well, if you see something like this with all of this XHTML, when you see things like this, this is using an older version of HTML, okay? Which it'll still work, it'll still work, but obviously some of the newer HTML5 features won't work. So this is probably a site just like many sites that was created years ago, and it's probably just used for marketing purposes. They probably haven't really updated it much. They might have done a little updates here and there, but they don't see the cost benefit in redoing the whole thing, right? So you'll see, especially little small sites and stuff like that, especially small little static sites like this. If they were created long ago, they probably haven't changed it, right? So this is telling the browser, hey, this is actually HTML4. Kind of hard for you to understand that, but don't worry about that. I'm just kind of used to what that looks like. But this is the declaration for an HTML4 website, okay, instead of HTML5. So just wanted to point that out. So this is using, what the browser will do. It's going to use what's called quirks. It's going to use a different mode for displaying this, right? So it's not going to, like if you try to actually update this, let's say you were the webmaster or you were the web administrator, and you went and added some HTML5 type things in here, for the most part, I believe it probably won't work, right? It probably won't work in the browser because you're not declaring this as an HTML5 document. Okay. So back what I was really wanted to come in here and say, kind of show you, is we were looking at those semantic elements, which were the header. We had the header, the nav, the footer. And here's the footer down here at the bottom. We've got a header, we've got a nav, we've got a footer. These are all IDs within div tags. And this is how you used to have to do it. You'd create the header, you create your your navigation, you'd have your body. This is kind of like the body part. And then here you've got your footer at the bottom, right? And that's how you would do that. And like we said earlier, the header and the nav and the footer of HTML5 tags are called semantic tags, right? Whereas the div is not, right? The divs are not. So keep that in mind. Okay. So structural elements, right? Them are structural elements. Header, main, footer. Okay, page displayed in the browser. That's not really telling us much. How to use div elements to structure content within a section. So, yeah. So a section is another, section's another structural type element. And this is just showing that, you can go ahead and use other tags in here. There are some other structural type ones, but maybe if it doesn't make sense to use it, then you just can use div tags, right? Div's actually the most popular tag used in HTML. And for, it's quick, it's easy, and you can kind of just do anything. It's kind of multi-purpose. You can kind of do whatever you want with it, and then you can put some styling on that div, right, to suit your purposes. But the bad thing is, but you really should, for best practices, depending on what you're doing on a page, you should try to use the structural. You should use the structural tags when it makes sense. All right. Only use non-structural ones like div when there's not a reason for using it, so to speak. Okay, that's really not helping too much on that. So like I was actually just showing, were used before HTML5. So here, you got a div tag, you got a body tag. Within that, you got some divs, you got your header, you got your main, you got your footer, right? And so that's how you used to do it. But now with HTML5, we can use header tags, right? Header, main, footer tags, right? So only use div tags when HTML semantic elements don't apply. Inline elements to identify and format text. We kind of just looked at it a little when this is displayed, enter, okay. To quote Hamlet. So you got a P tag. Yeah, so inline. If you don't get 78 on your final, you won't pass. Use inline elements to format text. Okay. Strong. Strong's another inline element. I haven't used something like this. I guess, in a way, I'm probably old school on some of this stuff because I haven't done that much HTML in recent years. So there's some things I need to look into and make sure I understand a little better. But the EM tag, the strong tag, these sub tags, these are all inline tags, right? As opposed to the block ones, right? The block ones take up all available space possible. Okay, the inlines are not, right? And this is kind of showing you because parts of this, when you got that tag, it didn't create a new line, right? If it's If you do a paragraph and a paragraph, it's gonna actually create a second. Let's just even do that real quick. I'll show you that here in a little bit when we get into Visual Studio Code. But if you put a paragraph and put another paragraph tag right after it, even on one line, right? On one line in your editor, you could have 3 paragraph tags all in one line. It will create a new line for each one of those. Okay, it's going to put each one of those on a new line, right? Because they are block elements, not inline elements. Okay, we're going to look at character entities. All right. So let's look at that a little bit. Let's close that. I have to do that because when I record, I've got a little thing up here that's in the way all the time. So these are HTML entities. So what happens is, so like in our code, you know how we use brackets and stuff like that? Well, if you want to display this on an HTML page, right? If you want to display this in the browser, I should say, okay? If you're in the editor, right? If you're in the editor, your code, all of our tags have a beginning and an end, right? So if you got a paragraph, and within that paragraph you've got some of these tags, you're going to have a problem because it's, the editor and the browser is going to think, oh, this is a tag, this is code, right? So it's going to handle that as its code and not something you want to display within the browser. And so when you ever want to have a bracket, a starting bracket, opening bracket, just display in your browser, you're going to have to use this. Okay? You're going to have to use this instead of the bracket. Less than, right? Ampersand, less than, and the semicolon. Yeah, that's required. Same thing with greater than. Okay? So that's that. And then another one, a commonly used HTML entity is a non-breaking space. Ampersand, that stands for NBSP, non-breaking space. Okay? There might be some situations where you want to put a space within a line, and that will ensure that you have a space. Okay? And so here's some useful HTML character entities. You should always use the name. Now it'll work. You can use this, which is this is the hexadecimal format. This is the Unicode format for that, right? Or you can use the name. It's best to use the name just for readability purposes. So if you have this in your code, so I'm like, well, what is 160? Especially someone newer may not know what some of these are, and even developers been around for a while would not necessarily know what they all are as well, right? So it's usually, you should use the name whenever you can. If not, then go ahead and you can use the number. If it's not available, or that's about it, I guess. But most of them have a name, right? Ampersand's another one because your code. Quotation marks, right? You got a quotation mark within code. Sometimes that can be challenging, right? Within the content, I should say. These are all content related stuff, right? The content within your code, within your HTML document, like in the Visual Studio Code, the content that's in there. When you use some of these things, you really need to use these entity characters, okay? Copyright, this is what you use for copyright, and this will put the copyright sign. This will put a trademark sign, okay? You just need to use that, okay? That's it. Just for the heck of it, not that it's really needed. We will be doing a little bit of this. We're going to do a little bit of this within some exercises and stuff. Not really these symbols, but just if you're ever interested. You know, you can try these different ones. So I shouldn't have done that. Okay. So there's different symbols that can be used. Some other supported entities. Yeah. Oh, we already kind of know that. Left arrow, right arrow. You know, so if you want this to display on a web page, you want to put an arrow on your web page. This is how you do it. Okay. You can use this entity. You can use this, or you can use the number. Right. Probably best to do this. Maybe a little more understandable. Right. Spades. There's different things you can do. Emojis. You can do some emojis and everything else. Okay. Not that it's necessary, you know, but, you know, you may want to play with that just for a little bit of fun, right? All right. So next here, simple website folder structure. You know, for things we're doing, maybe a little different than when you're going to do if you deploy to a web server and stuff like that. But usually you got a kind of a root element. And then under your root element, it might not say root. This doesn't have to say root. It could be whatever. But, you know, root's a good one to use. Under your root element, you know, you have different folders. So a lot of times you're going to have images, styles. In this case, this is having books because this is just showing an example of Murroc's books, right? So it's going to have a folder of books, and it's going to have their different books, their JavaScript book, their Java, PHP, C# books, right? But they have that service and about. So they, you know, have these different folders. And it's a good idea to separate your content in different folders to keep it, you know, a little more organized and makes things a little simpler and for coding purposes as well. Okay. So here's a simple website folder structure. So as far as URLs, and you know, I do want to kind of mention this because a couple people in their assignments did some things a little different. So usually, especially, you really want to try to use your you want to use your relative URLs in your folder in your thing, unless you're going to an external website. If you're going to an external website, you're going to have to, you know, you pretty much have to use an absolute URL, right? But anything that's local within your structure, if it's documents that you control within your folders, you know, within your web project folders, then you really want to use the relative paths, right? Because some people, because you know, I know there's, you know, some people are using like their whole directory structure from C colon all the way back. Well, I'm not going to have that on my whatever directory structure you have. I'm not going to have that on my machine, right? So it doesn't it's not going to work for me, right? So you don't want to kind of use a full structure. You want to be relative to your directory structure where you are. And another thing is some people use like their local host, which is in the little live server thing. And as well there, because sometimes like, you know, a couple of those, you know, a couple of people did that. And so if I pull up those, actually my port's different than their port. So, you know, if I adjusted the port, then it would work. But, you know, it's always best just to really make it local to your directory structure. You know, if it's files that you control, right? If it's files and folders and images, if you control it, then you should always keep it relative. And we'll learn how to do that here. So document relative. So this is telling you root. Always remember. So remember absolute. It's always going to be the full URL, right? And usually it's going to be when you're accessing something over the internet, right? Relative root paths. Remember, a relative root path is always going to start with a /. Okay. And this is document relative paths that navigate down. And we're going to look at this a little more here. So depends on where your directory is. This is how if your document's at the same level as another folder, this is how you can access your images, or in this case of the structure that they had set up, they have that books folder, and that's how you could do that if that's at the same level. as your document that you're working on, right? Your document that's trying to access these things, right? Now, if it's sometimes things can be up a level, right? It could be up a level from where you're at. Then you, whenever you want to go up one level, you do dot dot. If you want to go up 2 levels, right, you actually would do that. And that makes things relative to the your directory structure, right? And so we'll look at that as well here. Let's see, link examples. Okay, so let me let's do W3 schools a little bit again. So this is showing different file paths, right? So this one here is located in the same folder as the current page, right? So generally you wouldn't really want to do, it's probably always best to put your images in an image folder, right? To keep them together, organized. But if you did have a single image, then, you know, maybe that makes sense just to leave it the same level. But this one here is just going to be at the same level as the HTML page that's trying to access this, right? Here is basically at the same level. There'll be an images folder at the same level as where your HTML document is, right? In this case, this is saying whatever the root is from the root. This is an image folder from the root, okay? And I'm going to show you some examples of this that are going to help you a little better than this. And then this is just showing you this is a folder going up one, okay? So always remember, if there's 2 dots, you're going up one folder, all right? If there's a // another dot, you're going up 2 levels, right? Here, always remember, if it starts at the // this is just saying the root directory, okay? And then obviously if it doesn't have any / or no dots, then it's going to be at the same level, right? At the same level. Let me bring up something else here to help with that a little bit. So here's my GitHub repository, and so I created just for this demonstration. So I've got this folder called HTML here, and under that I got demonstrations, and then I've got some other directories here, right? So what I'm going to do in this case, because as far as especially in Visual Source Code, depends on at what point you open up a folder is really kind of what your root is, you know. And that's why it's probably best to always, you know, think in that terms. What is my project folder for my project? You know, for stuff we're doing, usually we're just going to be in the specific folder of our homework assignment. So you open that up, right? Not that you can't. You could open up the whole homework thing, right? And have them all there as well. But for most, probably the easiest and keep things most organized, is just open up the certain folder that you need, right? In Visual Source Code. So for this example, what I'm going to do is I've got this other directory structure here, and I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code here. Let me bring this over. So basically here, my root element is HTML, okay? I've got this chapter 3 stuff down here. I have a demonstrations folder. Under that, I got chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, right? So under these, so this document here is actually, let's just close it, is right here. So I'm going to open that up. So that's under the chapter 3, right, folder. That's under here. Don't let all this other stuff confuse you. But this chapter 3 HTML is under the chapter 3 folder. Now, if you go in here, and especially here within Visual Studio Code, which you might have already experienced already, and actually these pages don't exist yet, necessarily. But if you go ahead and here and put a /, Visual Studio Code is going to show you what you're at. So this is basically saying go to the root. And actually the root is not demonstrations. The root is really HTML. So what is at the root level? What is at the, what's this saying is, by you doing that, say what's at the root level? Well, the root's HTML. That's your root folder. What's at the root level? Demonstrations. Okay. So if you've got a, let's just say under demonstrations, under chapter 3 here, let's say I want to create a new file. And I'm going to call this home.html. Okay. And then if you recall, to create just a template, you can do shift, ! hit the enter key. There you go. And let's call this home page. And we're just going to save that. No, we're not going to put anything there. So there's our home page. So it's there. So for access to that, it's going to be what? It's just going to be home. It's going to have it right there, right? Home. So if we bring that up in the browser, open with live server, and we click on home, it's going to go to the home page. Home, there's the title up here, home page. So I didn't have any content in there, but that's okay. So, which is correct. Now, what if for some reason this thing is at a different location, right? Let's close this first. And I hope this is, I had a problem earlier trying to move some stuff. Can I cut that from there? And I want to go up to demonstrations and I want to paste it there. So this actually isn't under demonstrations. This is under HTML. Okay. Not to say you're wanting to do this. I'm just kind of trying to make a point here a little bit. So here, we try to run this, right? Try to follow this. We're not going to be able to find that. That's not there anymore, right? So we know that that is what? At what level? That's at the root level. There it is. It'll show up, right? That's at the root level. So let's now move that. So to access that, what would we do, right? We just do that and there. That's at the root level, which is the HTML folder. And now we have access to that. Let's save that. Let's run that. Let's click on that. That's our home page, right? If your page don't exist, what are you going to get? You're going to get that, right? You're going to get that error. That was that about one, which don't exist. But here's the /home. So that's at the root level, right? And we access that, and that is right there. So let's cut that and move that to this. Okay, now we got that there. Now, if we do that, is that still there? That shouldn't be there. Did I not really, didn't really move that, did I? There we go. Sorry. So there, all you have is demonstrations. At the root is HTML. Under the root, you have demonstrations. That's all you have under your root. So that nothing else is accessible. So for us to access that HTML document, we're here. We're at this level. We're at the chapter 3 level. So we want to go up to the demonstration level, because under the demonstration level, we have the home.html. So here, you're going to want to do this, right? And there it is. Let's run that. Make sure that that works. And there we go. I found it. Okay. Hope that makes sense a little bit. You know, just something you just play around with a little bit, right? You know, and the same thing is for, you know, sometimes like, you know, for my, I might have an images folder that's shared by multiple chapters, right? I might have multiple images that I, you know, because it's better, you know, for our assignments, it's not a big deal. I don't want to make it into a big deal, but for like a real website, you know, a website has multiple pages. A lot of times those images, you kind of want those at a higher level because you might, if you're going to reuse it, you don't want to have it in multiple places. It just doesn't make sense. It takes up space. It makes things confusing if somebody needs to change it or that, right? So you have all your images in one folder. So a lot of times you might have your images at the root level, right? So if you have your images at the root level, you're going to have to use the correct path to get to that images folder, right? So I hope that helps a little bit with that. Okay. So once again, yeah. So use relative paths. You know, when you control, you know, it's things that you have control over. They're folders, images, documents that you have, right? That's you have control over. Then always use relative, right? You know, really only need to use absolute when you're accessing something external from your web app, right? Your website. Let's see what this is. Create two lists. So we've already done this, right? We already did this as part of our exercises for chapter 2. Unordered list, ordered list. Showing you that. An image. Just remember that an alt tag that for image there's an alt tag, right? So I think there might be there's a couple other tags I believe also have an alt tag, but really it's more popular or more used more. I mean, because images are used obviously often in websites. But the alt tag is here in case that thing doesn't show up, right? Then it will display that, right? So here, let's just do that real quick. Anyhow, let's open up that. And that's another thing you want to do if you want to do a control. You can use the control key and click that. It'll open up that page. Right? I don't know what it did there. It grabbed something. Okay. That's the thing you got to watch about cut and pasting. Sometimes you get special characters and some funky things. And so here, so let's just go ahead and I could have opened just that page with live server, but that's all right. So it's going to say Maroc logo, right? If the image is there, it's not going to show at all, right? It's not going to show at all. Only shows if the image isn't there, right? Okay. Common image formats, JPEGs, GIF, you know, PNGs, probably familiar. I'm sure you're all familiar with those for the most part, at least at the highest level. For images with useful content, always code an alt attribute that describes the image. For images that use decoration. Okay. Let's see here. All right, simple web page. All right. I don't see anything reason to go over any of this. All right, so it's 10 o'clock. How about come back at 10:10, 10 minutes after 10, and we'll continue on. Show you some more things in the Visual Studio Code, and then we'll go over the assignments for Chapter 3, and the homework and the written test for Chapter 3. Okay, some of the things you're going to be doing is, part of your assignments coming up here is, and when we go through that assignment, we'll mention it again. But here's a description tag for meta description tag, right? Meta tags are always in the head section, and here you've got a description, and it's a description of the content here, right? It's just basically describing what your page is, right? What your page, what's the purpose of this page, right? That's the description. Keywords, just certain things you want to highlight for, search engine purposes, right? For search engine purposes. This is how you link either a style sheet or use this link, okay? I know this one can really, just starting out, being a new programmer, new to HTML and that. The link one, a little confusing, especially because really when we look at a hyperlink, we want to create one, we use that A tag, right? We use the href tag, right? That's how you actually create a link that way, right? Linking one page to another or, to an external link, use the A tag, right? Well, to bring something into your page, use the link. Use the link tag, okay? In this case, I'm bringing in this icon. And like I said, I'm going to create a separate video on generating icons and how to use it, okay? So here's this example here of this icon. And this, I've got it all set up here in this icon directory. And like I said, I'll run through that. I'll put that in that video and we'll run through that. And then obviously here's your title tag. Remember, your title tag's always going to be what's in the browser tab. When you look at your browser tab, that's where you're going to see your title, right? All this other stuff, you will see your favicon, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Obviously, all of these you're not going to see that, right? That's just code. That's just within your HTML, and that's read by the browser or read by search engine crawlers, right? All of that, either the browser or search engines. Okay. The title, so the icon's going to be. I'm going to show you that. I'll show you the title. This is a little redundant, but that's okay. And here, don't worry about all this. You don't need to know all this right now for this week. But this is called a normalized min style sheet. And you're gonna be doing this as part of an assignment later on. And this is basically it takes as far as like within Chrome, I'll use Chrome as an example. Chrome by default kind of does some styling around. It's kind of does a kind of an out. It's kind of looks almost like a container. So it actually does a little bit of styling. And when I say styling, I mean just like spacing and stuff. And it does some spacing that's kind of around your page, any kind of page you bring up in the browser, right? But there's ways to actually reset that. So there's that it's basically they're using like margins and stuff. And to get rid of that, you can actually use what's called a normalize. And we'll talk about that, like I said, in a later chapter here. I don't know if it's chapter 4 or 5, but we'll be looking into that. Okay, so don't have to worry about that. Now here, so when you create a style sheet, whenever you create a style sheet is where your cascading styles are. You're gonna this is how you would do that, right? And it doesn't even matter. If it doesn't matter where it's at, right? So here in this case, I have the style sheet right here. So basically, that's how you're going to access that. It's going to be at the same level as your HTML page that we're in. And so we'll access that. Now, obviously, it's always, best practices and good to create a folder. I'd create a folder under chapter 3 called styles maybe, or CSS. You call it styles or CSS, and then have your styles.css in there, right? So that will bring that in. Now, a lot of what we're doing here, so like I said before, some of these exercises actually ask you to do things that are really maybe in a little bit of the next chapter, so forth. So really this cascading style sheet stuff is really in the next chapter, okay, for the most part. But there's a couple things that you're going to need to know how to do for the assignments for chapter 3, okay? And we'll talk about that in a little more here when we go through that assignment. What else I want to talk about here? So we went through our paths, our relative paths. Just remember, it's a good idea to use these semantic elements like for your page. You really should, and use the header. You're going to need to use this anyhow for the chapter 3 assignment. Header and nav and main, okay? Not necessarily section. Now, section's really good for just keeping related content together. That's really like the main purpose of sections, keep related content together. And these are just little examples for demonstration purposes, right? This ain't what you're going to have in there if you do a section. But this is related content as we're talking about metadata here. We're talking about block elements, semantic elements. When you have multiple things, you have a heading and you have a paragraph. You might have multiple different tags here, all to do with some specific subject area, like for metadata. So you have multiple tags for your metadata thing, and it's kind of a good idea. You can put that within a section tag, right? It's all relevant to that section, okay? Just to kind of review, we looked at these a little bit. So like you've got your less than sign, remember? And here's another one. Here's another tag, and I don't believe you're going to be tested on this, but the code tag. And this is kind of to show, this is very helpful when you're trying to show, some coding related stuff. You want to show code in your browser. You want to be able to, on your web page in your browser, you want to show code. Well, you have to do it in a special way because you don't want the browser actually trying to execute that code, right? You're just wanting for display purposes to show the code, right? And so when I fire this up, you'll see that this will be a less than sign, a header, and a greater than sign, right? If you ended up trying to put, the header tag in here, the whole thing, it's going to be an issue, okay? So I'm saying, let's see that. Okay, don't see anything there. What else? Inline and block. Remember, block takes up all available space within that line, whereas inline's just going to, so like strong's inline, it's only going to take up space just for that strong, right? The p tag's going to take up that whole line if it can, right? It all depends on how some things are styled, how much space is really going to take up. But generally, just by how this is set up here, it's going to take up that whole line, a p tag is. But the strong tag is only going to take up just enough space for this, okay? That's called inline. We've done our ordered list. And here's our character entities. We already seen the less than and greater than sign. And this is for an ampersand, right? That's an ampersand. And then this is for your copy. Copyright, which is like this. Okay. And this has a footer, right? This is your footer section. And that's what you're usually going to have, a copyright. some footer sections can be pretty extensive. You could have a lot of links down there. A lot of times they have on pages usually like about stuff. It all depends on how things are set up. But if we kind of go look at the browser here and look at like here. If we just go to the root here, we'll just go to the root. So, their footer section, I would imagine, I don't know what this code is. And actually, this is another nice tool you can learn. You could do inspect, and it'll go to the exact place in the code. Yeah. So they're calling it my footer. Yeah, well, yeah, okay. Oh, actually, the footer's up here a little higher, isn't it? So they're just having their footer there. You don't have to worry about this. I don't want all this to confuse you. But, as time goes on, be beneficial. But sometimes back down here in a footer tag, you might have multiple things. Sometimes it's just going to be one thing. Sometimes people have something that's a little more complex in their footer, right? All depends. Let's go back here. So here, let me bring this up. So what we're going to kind of look at here, kind of go over some of these things that we've seen here and see it within the browser. I'm wondering why that didn't work. Okay, that's all right. So up here, you've got your HTML concepts demonstration. That's your title. Okay. I'm wondering why the favicon didn't work for some reason. I don't know. I'll have to look at that again. Had that working earlier. But, and like we were talking about, things like this, you try to put this, that's why you have to use those less than and greater than signs, so that the browser don't try to execute that as the actual tag itself. And by using that code and along with the greater than and less than signs, and that way you can go ahead and display things that are code related, or anytime you would necessarily may want to use a less than or greater than sign, right? Whenever the browser sees a less than or greater than sign in your code, it's going to think that that's HTML markup language, right? And it's going to try to do something with that, right? Okay. Then here's your here's your copyright sign at the bottom down here on the left. Yeah, nothing more. I guess there's not too much more I really want to show you on here. Just remember the block elements take up as much space as they can. Inline's only going to be minimal. Well, then, so in most of the cases, not to keep repeating this, but you want to use the relative paths when you have control over your documents, when you have control of your images, folders, when it's within your project itself, you want to use those relative paths. Really only use an absolute path when it's kind of an external link outside of your web project that you have. Okay. So let me go ahead and pull up. Let's pull up the written test first. Okay, so I want to go over the assignments for the Chapter 3 assignments for this week. I'll go over the Chapter 4 assignments tomorrow. So for the Chapter 3 written test, I'm not going to be doing it for you like I did last week. Pretty much gave you the answers for both Chapter 1 and 2, so you're going to have to work on this yourself. I do want to mention, and I think I mentioned it at the beginning of the video today, that there's some answers that are incorrect on the written test. And so what I will be doing is just go ahead and do the written test. After it's submitted, so it'll be like next Monday, whatever, I will go in there and I will look at the answers, and the ones that I know that the system is going to incorrectly mark them. They're going to mark them as wrong, even even though if they're right. So I will go in there. If you did get it right, I will go ahead and mark it so that you get credit for it. Okay. If you happen to guess the one that's actually wrong, I'll let you have that credit, as I'm not gonna get into changing them back and forth. But if you get one wrong and it's one of those ones, I'll go through that next week. Actually, we probably should go through the written test next week. This chapter 3 written test will go through that. Okay, and I'll mark the ones that were incorrectly marked and give you credit for those. Okay. But like I said, I'm not going to go through each one of these questions and give you the answers, okay? But what we will do is go ahead and go through this a little bit. So as far as resources for your written test, you can use the course textbook. So you all should have access now to the course textbook via VitalSource. So you should have access to that. Also, I went ahead and created the study guide. I'll bring this up real quick. And this ain't going to necessarily help you with every question in there, but it's just a quick little study guide. It's going to go through a lot of the main points that are part of the written test. Title element talks about the meta element, the document structure, block versus inline, character entities, linking, list, which you're already done list a little bit, so you should know. Images, accessibility, semantic elements. Okay, so it has it's not everything that's on the test, but it will help you with some of the questions on that test. Okay, and in addition to that, you can go ahead and any kind of internet resource you need for the written test, go ahead and use that. I did give here's some links to some of the W3 schools documentation, semantic elements, blocks, meta, HTML entities. All of these are relevant for the written test, and they will also help as well with the homework assignments. But these will help a little bit more with the written test, so you can use that as well. Okay. As far as the homework, so here's a bunch of links that I'll give you for the homework, for the resources, but we'll go ahead and go over the assignment a little more. So I'm going to walk through a few things here. I'm not going to do number 4. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create this page. Okay. I'm going to create this page. I'm going to show you how to do the external style sheet. Okay. This icon generator, the favicon generator, I'm going to do a separate video on that. And so you'll see the separate video for that. Now, as far as the semantic elements, as far as the number 4, you're going to have to do your own research on that. And some of those links I just mentioned, that'll help with those. Okay, same thing with number 5 and 6. Okay. You do your own research and figure out how to do that. On line 7, I'm going to go ahead right now, and I'm going to like I said, I'm going to create the main file, the HTML file, and I'll show you how to use a wrapper. Okay. And I'm going to show you how to do background color and a text color as well. Okay. And also what you'll be doing, it's a little bit different than the other HTML, is we have the CSS validator. So the CSS that you create. So we're going to create the CSS as a separate file. So you can just upload this file, okay, and then you can check it, okay. And so I guess I'll just do that too. Just show you that, and that's it, okay. So let's go back here, and I'm going to create this, and I'm going to show you how to add the style sheet and then do this wrapper, okay? Everything else is on you. So let's go to Visual Studio. Okay. So in here, I had some other things in this directory. I just cleaned it out to make it a little bit easier, less confusing. So in here, we're going to go ahead and right click and do a new file. And this is the about me.html file. Okay. And then in here, we can use the default template, right? We do the shift, that. Shift exclamation point, hit enter. And then that's our basic document. Should always, just out of habit, you know, I know some people on the first homework assignments didn't give a title, but you know, you should always kind of give a title, a relevant title. Okay. I'm just going to save that. Save it. I don't know if I went through that. I always hit Control S. Some people might be doing file save. You can always just do the Control key, hold it on the Control T and S to save. Okay. So you can save that document there. The next thing we're going to do is create a cascading style sheet. So I'm going to right click, do a new file here. And let's just call this styles, S-T-Y-L-E-S .css. Okay. And we'll save that. And then in here, so what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to do we want to call in that style sheet, right? So we're going to do link. Okay. And we use this relation attribute equals. And we're going to call this is going to be a style sheet. You just tell them what kind of link this is, right? And then we need to do a href tag. And we're going to add our styles.css, right? Once you create it, it'll have it there for you to do autocomplete. And then we need to end it, right? So now we're calling in our style sheet. And since it's at the same directory level as our file is, we don't have to do anything else, right? If it was up higher, as we already discussed, we have to either do it from the relative from the root or go up a directory or whatever, right? But for this scenario, we have this just at the root, at the same level as our document within the chapter 3 directory, right? Okay, so save that. So now we want to create a little wrapper. That's the assignment asked to create a wrapper, right? So what we're going to do here is we're doing a div tag, right? And here's kind of a shortcut. Here's a shortcut to get the div tag created, and actually with the ID, we're going to create a div with an ID. And based on that ID, we're gonna style that div based on that ID, right? So what you can do is as far as a shortcut, which is the same kind of, you know, kind of, we do the shortcut just to create the default template here, the HTML template. We can also use Emmet for that, for creating tags and stuff like that, right? So what we can do is for a div tag, you just put a dot for a div tag, right? And then we want to use the word wrapper because we're going to create a class. We're going to create a style called wrapper. And just by doing that and hitting tab, it'll create this div tag with the class wrapper. Okay. And then, oh, actually we want this to be an ID. My mistake. Here, let me remove this and let's do this again. Okay. So what we really want to do here is do not a dot, a dot's for a class. We want to do a pound sign, right? And then we want to do wrapper, okay? Then if we hit tab, it'll create the ID of wrapper. Pound pound or a hash for an ID, and you use a dot for a class. But we're going to use an ID. So now we've got this div, right? And basically this div we're created, the purpose is this is kind of actually to take up almost the whole. So the body is kind of the container for everything, for everything you see in the browser, like what a user would see when they bring it up, right? Pretty much your body's the kind of the container, so to speak, kind of the enclosing HTML element of your everything you see in the browser, right? So basically this div, we're pretty much going to be taking up the same thing. Within our body tag, we're going to have this div, okay? And what I'm going to want to do here is I want to get some content so we can kind of see what it kind of looks like. I want to put a bunch of content in here, and I'll show you how we can do that. So we can go to this website. Let me pull this up. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It's called Ipsum. And so Ipsum is, right here, it tells you what Ipsum is, right? It's simply a dummy text for the printing and typesetting industry. It's been used since the 1500s. And, it's just to come up with some basic content so you can work on positioning things and everything else, okay? And so what you can kind of do in here, you don't need this for this exercise. I'm just doing this because I want to come up with a bunch of content, okay? But here you can create paragraphs. You put numbers in here, hit generate, right? And boom, it'll generate all this text, okay? So I'm going to grab all this text. So I just want to grab this so we can just kind of, from demonstration purposes, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come back in here to our editor. And in our wrapper, I'm just going to put all that text in there. Okay, I'll drop all that text in here. So this is just complaining, and because this is that HTML validate extension, just complain about spaces like this. It doesn't like that, so I'm just going to hit the backspace to get rid of it. Oh, really didn't mean it. It doesn't matter if I back, but just get rid of that just so it's happy. Because when it's red like this orangish red color. I guess that's red. It depends on your eyes, I guess. So I'm just going to get rid of all that, and boom, now it's happy, right? It's happy. So here's a bunch of content within that div tag, and the div has an ID of wrapper. Then I'm going to come back here into the styles, okay? And then here I am going to create, I'm going to create that wrapper just like this. And we're going to do an open and close like that. So this is our wrapper. This is what will be used for that div tag. And so in here, we'll just go ahead and do a width. Okay. And you can just click these just like that, right? And we're going to do 80%. Let's do 80% there. Not sure what happened there. 80%. And then we're going to do a margin. And we'll talk more about this, especially tomorrow. Chapter 4 is more cascading style sheet related. This is just a little bit of styles we're going to be doing for this exercise. Tomorrow we'll talk about a lot of these in a lot more depth tomorrow, okay? So for this margin, what we're going to do is we want a margin. So there's different ways to do this margin. You can do a margin for, you can just specify top, bottom, left, right. And you could do that by doing four different attributes here. But you can just, here you can actually just do 2 for top, and if you want the same for top and bottom. If we want 0 margin, we're just kind of following what the exercise is asking for. So for top, and this will be top and bottom will be 0. And then for left and right, it will be auto. Okay. And so we can save that. So we have 0 margin on top and bottom, and auto is left and right. Okay. our width is 80%. So before, I probably maybe, let me cut just for now. Let me save that without anything because I always want to look at this first. I want to show you this before first. So here it's just all, basically all the basic text that's here, right? No styling really at all. I might as well mention, so actually the browser puts in a little bit of margins just by default. It always kind of the main container all the way around in the browser by default puts in a little margin and a little padding. And we'll talk about that more in the future because sometimes you don't really want that and you want to get rid of that. And we'll talk about how that's done. And that'll be in the future here, not today. But here's just the basic text that we cut and paste in there. Okay. So let's go back now and go back here and let's go to styles. And I'm going to go ahead and put that back in there, what we had. Now I'm going to save this. Okay. We'll go back here and I'll open a live server. And I know what I did wrong. I already know what I did wrong. So what I did wrong here, this is something that, it's easy to make a mistake. You got to remember the dot is for classes and a pound sign is for IDs, right? So if I save this now, come back in here and I do open with live server. Now you can see we have some margins on both sides. So this is basically what it's doing is it's saying I'm only going to take up 80% of this page and that margin. So it's going to have a margin of 0 at the top. Like I said, though, there's a little bit of there's a little bit up there, but that's just kind of the default that the browser automatically puts in there. But on left and right, it's going to be it's going to auto. So it's just basically going to kind of center it is what it's doing. And so this text is only taking up 80%, right? So let's just go back and make some changes to that so we can take a look at it a little more here. So let's go back to our styles here and let's change this to something like 40%, right? And then let's go back here. Actually, I could just, probably will keep this full screen. So as you can see, it's a lot smaller, right? Because it's only using 40%, right? What else do I want to change here? Just for the heck of it, just so you're seeing it. Instead of our 0, let's just make this something like 30. Let's make this something substantial, 30 pixels. Let's save that. So you have a little bit more up here, right? You have a little more space. Okay. So that's how you do that. And that's what you kind of need to do for this exercise. But for that, it was asking for a 0 here and an 80%, I think. And there you go. Just remember I made the mistake instead of having that dot, right? The period, the dot. Dots are for classes, and the pound sign or the hash is for IDs, right? And here we're using an ID. Just for the heck of it, just to show you, if I change this to class, now all of a sudden it's not going to find it. Boom, it scooted all the way over there, right? If I come back here and change this to a dot, and now it's working, right? So just quick demonstration on how that works, just so you know. So that should help with that portion of the test. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so then also, so we want to go ahead and use the CSS validator here. Okay, so I open that up here. This is a CSS validation service. So let's find the path to our file. I mean, we can actually go through that right here, but sometimes that can be difficult for people depending on where it's at, how deep it is. So one thing you can always do here, remember, you can right click on this, do reveal in File Explorer, shows the path. So I tend to do this a lot, and then I copy the whole path. And then I come in here, I want to do by file upload, not by URI. Make sure you choose by file upload, right? And then choose file here. Mine's already there, but then you can cut and paste it, put it in there, and then you should see your cascading style sheet. Click open, right? And then click check. And then here you go. Congratulations, no error found. It's a simple one, so hopefully wouldn't have too many problems with it. So there you go. And then you just want to make sure you do a screenshot of this and include that with your homework assignment. So that's about it on that. And so like I said, what we did here is we create the file name, the About Me file. We created the style sheet, right? We did the link to bring in the style sheet. And we created our div. We created a div that pretty much is the whole body, and that's within the body tag. And then we gave it an ID of wrapper, and then our style sheet we use the hash or the pound, and that's what you use for a ID. And so then we went ahead and put our styles to be an 80%, and our margin of 0 for top and bottom, and auto for left and right. Okay. Oh, I'll tell you what. Let me go ahead and also show you this background color and text color as well. I didn't show you that. So let me run through that real quick here. So here, what we want to do is, so there's kind of different ways, primary ways to define your styles for your pages by ID or by class, which we use the dot or the period, right, for class. And then also you can use your HTML elements, right? So in this case, we're going to use our body tag, right? So we're going to use our body, and then within our body, what we're going to want to do is we're going to do a background color. And our background color, choose whatever you want to choose. Let's choose, let's do beige. Let's do beige. And so that's the background color of our whole page. And then as far as your text is concerned, you use color. Okay, and let's do a brown color. I know these aren't colors that you really want to do, but just kind of want it to, so you can actually see it's different, right? So let's go back to our About Me. Let's right click and open with Live Server. And so as you can see, you've got your background color. Now remember, we have our div tag, right? And our div tag was our 80%, but we see that the background color is even outside our div tag is because we put that background color on our body. So our whole body, basically the whole browser window here that we can see, right, is the body. And so that's got the color that we added. And then obviously the text, all the text that's within that body and the text that's within that div is within that body. So it's going to use that it's going to apply that style to this text. Okay. So that's it. So that'll help you with that part as well. Okay. And then just go ahead, after you make those changes, save with your background color, your text color, then go ahead and do your validator on all of that, right? And then, so what else could be helpful? And I'll also send you these other resources. It tells you about connecting an external CSS file, header, main, aside, footer. Them are the ones you need to do. So they'll give you some definition. You can try some things out, help you with that. Here's one for meta tag. Here's the background color, and here's the text color, right, that we just kind of did. So there's some links to help you as well. So I hope this kind of help you a little bit with your homework and your written test. I'm expecting a little more here for the written test for you to do that on your own. But I think you should be fine with that. Just you're gonna have to spend a little bit of time. You have to do a little bit of research for the written test. Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot.